Good morning, all. This is Drishti from People Matters, and we are back with another exciting webcast. Today's webcast is in partnership with C2COD and is on the topic Avoid Crucial Evaluation Mistakes when Using the Kirkpatrick Model Learning Effectiveness. Before starting the session, let me give you a brief about the topic. The Kirkpatrick model is the most used training evaluation model in the world. This does not, however, mean that it is always implemented correctly. What does misapplication put at risk? The image that training holds in many organizations, the future of your training department, and ultimately your job. In today's webcast, the speakers would be sharing the most common execution errors and their consequences. They will also suggest ways to avoid these errors in first place. The practical tips that will be shared can be implemented by any training professional to maximize their program value. Here's what the webcast will cover: a brief summary of the Kirkpatrick model, three of the most common evaluation mistakes, tips on how to avoid these mistakes, research brief that reflects how these mistakes show up, analyzing some of other pitfalls you may face, and lastly, how your organization can get certified in implementing Kirkpatrick methodology effectively. Let me now introduce you to the speakers of this webcast. Today we have the privilege of having with us Preeti B. Rao, Head of Learning Effectiveness at C2C Organizational Development, and Alwyn De Silva, General Manager, Human Resources, Tata Communications. Preeti is a well-respected learning and development professional with over 17 years of experience in different operations. Being a certified Kirkpatrick facilitator for Kirkpatrick Partners and one of the only two gold certified Kirkpatrick practitioners in India, Preeti has delivered several public and in-house workshops on the Kirkpatrick 4 levels of evaluation. Alwyn lives his dream each day working as a human resource professional. As he candidly says, I love what I do, and hence it's not a job, it's like having a passion and getting paid for it. He enjoys learning from Gen Y and equally enjoys teaching the Gen X. He has worked across the value chain in the telecom industry and has been on the other side of HR in multiple roles like customer services and global processes transitions. Now, let me tell you more about our partner for today's webcast, C2C Organizational Development. C2C Organizational Development is a high performing team of organizational development consultants, facilitators, and content designers who believe that people are at the core of an organization's success. The team has a global presence and is passionate about seeing people and organizations work better together. With in depth experience in multiple industries and work across all layers of an organization, they bring people development and business strategy together to deliver solutions with real business impact. Being official affiliates of Kirkpatrick Partners, the one and only Kirkpatrick in India, C2COD effectively assists individuals and organizations in building solid and memorable learning experiences linked to performance. Before we begin the exciting session, let me remind you that we have saved time for questions at the end of the webcast. For those who are live, can simply pose the questions at any time during the session, and we will try to respond to all the questions as time allows. Now, without any further delay, let me invite Preeti and Alwyn to take over and begin the experience. Over to you.
Thank you, Drishti. Good morning, everybody. Alvin, you want to say hi to the team?
Hey, hi, good morning, everyone.
Awesome. So I'm going to start my screen sharing now. So just we can take a look at the slide deck as well, and I'll keep toggling between the slide and the video as is needed. So just give me a moment while I do that. Okay. Sorry, technological glitches always. All right, here we go. So, we are going to talk about the fatal errors that can be committed while trying to evaluate and trying to implement the Kirkpatrick model. Drishti has already told you what the objectives for today are. So, we will take a look at common evaluation errors that can occur when we are trying to evaluate our training programs. So, I wanted to start with a little bit of research. I know the slide is a little bit cluttered, but let me quickly talk you through it to share with you what we were trying to achieve here. Bursin by Deloitte had done some research. This was around 2015, 2017 that they did the research. And what they did was they tried to map organizations with regard to their maturity level, with regard to the L&D practices that they had. And they kind of rated organizations from maturity level 1 to maturity level 4. And what they said was that organizations which are at stage 1 are the organizations which are doing a periodic sort of episodic training program. So if there is a certain need that occurred and they design a training program and run the training program. There is no real fixed approach as to how to go about it. Organizations which are at maturity level 2 are a little bit responsive in nature. They do some contextualization of the training program. They might use tools such as design thinking to make it more centric to the employee development initiatives that the organizations has, and focus on implementing processes which are transparent and easy for people to use within the organization with regard to L&D. Organizations which are at level 3 are looking at how do I develop individuals, because every individual's need is not the same. So how do I then identify what are the specific requirements of each individual within the organization, and then how do I take care of those needs? How do I focus on creating conditions that enable development? Because development can only happen if there's actually something beyond the training program itself, and there's more that's happening. So how do I continuously evolve technology, infrastructure, everything to ensure that the organization is providing the necessary space that an individual needs in order to learn. And finally, the level 4 organizations are the ones which are anticipatory in nature. So they are thinking, what is the future of business looking like? What is the future of the organization looking like? What are the long-term career and goals of the individual? How do we then foster a culture of learning, innovation, feedback, support system, all of that into a very high-performing learning team? So pretty much they had organizations divided across these 4 levels, and started to think of which organizations fell where. So if I were to ask you, Alvin, where do you see Tata Communication falling in this grid?
Thanks, Preeti. I would see Tata Communications at level 3, evolving over the many years, from being responsive, then to a point where where we would just respond to training needs, to a point where we started customizing training needs, to the next phase where we started building academies, which is more continuous and ongoing. So it's not a need based or a momentary training, or it's a journey. And now we're working on building the future skills for the evolution in ICT and in telecom. So looking at how the business is evolving in the telecom world, and what skills will be needed 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and our academies are getting more smarter to be able to build those skills. It helps in two ways: helps the company to have skills available before the business matures, and for the employees, it helps them build skills much earlier, before they know their old skills are getting redundant. So I would
Absolutely.
say that's where we are.
And if you were to just think back, how long did this entire journey take for you from 1 to 4?
I think it would have taken close to 7 to 8 years, definitely.
And of
Uh,
a lot of focused effort, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. And, we got our first award at the CLO last year, which was an acknowledgement for us that we are reaching there. Winning the Golden Peacock this year, gave us the confidence that that we are staying at a particular level with the kind of LNOD initiatives we are driving. True.
Awesome.
It's
Thank
the
you, Alvin.
Yeah.
And pretty much, I've worked with Tata Communication for a while now, and that's what I realized as well, that as an organization, they've put in a lot of effort to grow and build. Now, if I were to ask you, people who are logged into the seminar, what level of learning organization maturities your organization is in, you can put your answers in the chat window and then we can take a quick look at it. Where do you think? Are you at level one, two, three, or four? And I'll give you a moment to answer. All right. It doesn't look like we have any answers just as yet. So let's go on
Probably,
ahead.
probably we could even tell them a little about the four levels. Maybe that might help. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the four levels in just a moment. But very quickly to show the research that came up from Bursing, they figured that with regard to maturity levels at organizations, here's what the numbers looked like. And what they found that was that most organizations, about 35% of the organizations, are still at maturity level one, which means that they are doing episodic programs. 39%, which is a higher number, is at maturity level two, where there's some amount of contextualization, some amount of personalization of the programs happening. 20% are at maturity level three, and finally, only 6%, where I think Tata Communication falls now, are at about maturity level four with regards to learning evaluation and L&D in general. So if we were to really think about this and consider what this means for us, is that a large percentage of the organizations are still at the lower maturity stages. So there is a lot of scope for us to grow big, think about how we want to change our training programs, think about what kind of training programs we want to run, and very importantly, think about how do we build in the support systems and the infrastructure and the culture of learning in an organization so that our participants are able to evolve and adapt to the changing environment. So in order to do that, one of the tools that we've been using very successfully over the past few years is the Kirkpatrick's four levels model. I'm going to very quickly show you what the model looks like and then do a brief discussion around it. From, from historic evidences, it is true that a lot of people know about the Kirkpatrick model and they know that there's level one, two, and three, and four. But about 10 years ago, Jim Kirkpatrick, who's the son of Donald Kirkpatrick, who's the creator of the model, along with his wife Wendy, created something called the New World Kirkpatrick model. And what they did was try to take the four levels and expand them a bit more to make them specific and important based on what is needed today. So they said level one and level two are level one is pretty much reaction, which checks the engagement, the relevance of the training program, and whether the participants were satisfied or not. So pretty much all the smiley sheets that we used to use are part of level one. We do talk about moving away from those smiley sheets and doing other things that might be useful as well, which could be something as simple as putting up a flip chart in the room and said, did you find this topic relevant to you or not? Taking pictures of the training program, which will tell you whether the participants were engaged or not. Just having a very quick hands up survey, which tells you whether the customers are satisfied or not. Those kind of things that you can start using to minimize your resources at level one and two, and then have more resources available at level three and four. Level two is all about knowledge, skills, and attitude. That these three were already there. As part of the New World Kirkpatrick model, what got added was confidence and commitment, saying at the end of the training program, even if I do nothing else, at the end of the program, did the participant feel that they are confident enough to go back and apply some of those skills that they have learned onto their job? And do they feel committed to or not? Because if they don't feel committed, pretty much no change is going to happen. There's going to be nothing different that you see. And similarly, if they don't feel confident, that means something more has to be done in order for them to be able to start applying that knowledge. And then they said level three is on the job learning. Pretty much it's the behavior on the job that the participant is doing differently as compared to what they were doing earlier before the learning intervention. So what behaviors have changed? And as part of this, there were four things which were added, which are encourage, monitor, reinforce, and reward, which pretty much means, am I able to monitor whether the person is showing those behaviors or not? Am I able to reinforce that knowledge for that person through a lot of, maybe post program support in terms of having a discussion 2 weeks later, 2 months later? How am I encouraging the person? Am I giving them, enough feedback, enough coaching that allows them to feel that, yes, this is really useful for me? And finally, am I rewarding them or not? And this leads automatically to the level 4, which is the results, which is pretty much the desired outcome. But in order to measure those desired outcomes, the key factor is having a series of leading indicators which lead up to that desired outcome. So if a training program on communication is expected to increase customer share in the market, somehow those two numbers don't add up. How is communication skills going to add to customer share in the market? So what are those little things that will lead us along the journey that will allow us to say that this communication program actually led to that desired outcome? So things like lesser customer complaints, more customer feedback, which is positive in nature, more customers recommending our products and services to other customers, more customers coming back, return customers, customers who left us are coming back to us. So, what are those variables that lead us to those desired outcomes? And of course, throughout the process, we monitor and adjust in order to understand what's going right and what's going wrong. So, pretty much in a nutshell, this is the Kirkpatrick model. And you will notice that this model is not like a pyramid, which says that one level is more important than the other. It is not even a square box which says you have to do level one, two, three, or four in that particular order. It is a series of steps that we need to do in order to achieve success. And through the program, we'll tell you which order to follow best in order to get the best possible results. Um, so let's start straight away and jump into the first fatal error that we are going to talk about, which is evaluating the levels individually and sequentially. So what by that what I mean is sharing my screen. Sorry, give me a moment. So the fatal error one is evaluating the levels individually and sequentially. By this, what we mean is that we are looking at level one as a standalone level, level two as something else, level three and level four is something that we sometimes get to or not even get to. Alvin, if you were to think about it from your experience, have you ever had done the mistake of looking at the levels individually and sequentially, and how has that worked out for you?
Yes, Preeti. I think very early in my career, most of the times, if I would look at training effectiveness or the program effectiveness, it was more to do with whether the ADDIE model has been applied, and is the program capturing the TNI needs and the TNA details in entirety. When I understood the Kirkpatrick model in a very simple way through the early certification process, I realized that the four levels of Kirkpatrick don't have to be done in a sequential way. In fact, at the level one, at the feedback form stage itself, you could ask questions about application. You could ask questions about what kind of results you think you could achieve. These can help us also understand how committed or confident they are at the level one stage itself.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation for me, and that's how we improved our feedback process, and we automated the feedback. I mean, we went from paper to being online, and we made it this way. The other thing I learned as I kept applying the Kirkpatrick model is knowledge, skills, and attitude is something that we usually as L&D professionals test through tests, or by running a simulation or by running a role play. There are many ways in which we do it. It's tricky. How do you measure commitment and confidence? And for a technical initiative which I ran 2 years back, that's what we did is we converted the exams into certifications. Okay.
Okay.
What happens is when you clear an exam, you know that you cleared an exam which had questions and it was a paper that was set. But when you are certified and that certification has any respect in the organization by the seniors in the company, that becomes something else. So for example, we set up certification levels for level 2. So by the end of it, individuals started feeling, okay, great, I'm certified. So that gave them that commitment and confidence. Level 3, we saw a lot of that happen with the behavior the agents were showing while talking to customers, in terms of our survey to our customers, saying, how did you feel after the call? When you spoke to our agent, what did you feel? The other way is the business matrices. The business matrices are important, right? We started seeing that our repeat complaints started reducing. And
Right.
that's one of the best things. Or when there is a failure, how many repeat calls we get from the customers on an average, prior and now. So is there a difference? Are they able to talk to the customer in a way the customer feels confident enough that we don't need to keep calling them again and again? So you're actually able to measure these things. So these are some things, I've seen change as I apply and learn from my mistakes in applying the Kirkpatrick model. These are few things I could share.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. I think that's a very useful list of things that you shared with us. So, if we were to really think about it, there might be some problems with, looking at the levels individually and sequentially. And what I mean by that is, we could possibly be, because if we are looking at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, it is possible that we just stay stuck at level 1 and 2 and do not move beyond that to level 3 and 4, which are actually the more crucial levels in terms of showing value to the business. And that might be a big problem, because eventually when business starts to ask us, what has L&D contributed, if we are going to show them level 1 and 2 data in terms of only showing that yes, participants were happy with the program and yes, they learned from the program, that doesn't always cut it. Organizations need us to show that whatever we invested actually changed to something on the job. So it might be a bit of a waste of time and money, because we spent so much time understanding whether the participants liked it or not, that we didn't spend enough time and money to understand whether anything of real value came out of it. And of course, eventually we'll fail to show business value. So I loved what Alvin said about asking certain indicative questions right at level 1 itself. It doesn't have to be that level 1 evaluation is only about, did you like the training program, did you like the content, did you like the trainer, did you like the venue. It doesn't have to be about that. It could be about leading questions which lead you to level 3 and perhaps level 4. So the kind of things that Alvin said about commitment and confidence, they are showing that yes, eventually there is a possibility that the participant will apply this learning because they feel confident, they feel committed. If we don't do any of that, we don't even have that much data to show if we don't evaluate at level 3 and 4. So it is about thinking, how can I use hybrid methods? One method which shows me multiple ways of evaluating across different levels. So, can I build my survey in such a way that I am able to evaluate even up to an indicative level 4? I am not proving that level 4 has occurred, but indicatively, at least, is level 4 happening? And those are things to be thought about with regard to sequentially thinking. So, some actions that could be very well taken are to focus on usefulness and credibility. And by this, what I mean is information which is useful for me in order to make my program better, make my program more effective, make my program more, um, you know, useful to the participants. So if for me, for a new program, for example, if I'm piloting a program, if I think that at this time it is very important for me to collect very detailed level 1 reaction data to understand what parts of the modules are resonating with the participants, which part of the session is not so useful to them, is the facilitator a good fit for this program or not? Do I need to make some logistical changes in order to make this program even better? I will do a very detailed level 1 reaction because that is useful for me. But if a program has been running for 4 years and I'm still collecting a smiley sheet at the end of it, that actually either lies in some archive online or in some file if it is hard paper, what is the point of it? All I'm doing is wasting time and money, and it's not useful to me or to anybody else. So if something is not useful, I don't do it. If something is useful, I do it. And the credibility part is thinking about showing information to my stakeholders that tells them that performance improved, organizations' results were impacted, and things changed. So if I can collect data that is credible to my stakeholders. So if I go to my stakeholders and tell them that, we scored a 4.5 or 4.9 out of 5 on training effectiveness, my stakeholders are going to ask me, so what? Okay, so your program is good, so what? And that clearly means that that's not credible data to them because they don't believe that this data is useful. But if I can go and tell my stakeholder, like Alvin was talking about, that we were looking at business matrices, and then I go and tell them that, we've seen that as a result of X, Y, and Z things happening, we are seeing that the customer satisfaction scores are slowly going up. And if this is something that I had agreed with my stakeholder right at the beginning, that if I do this communication program and I do it well, I will see customer satisfaction scores going higher. That is credible data to them. They will understand that, yes, our program is a contributory factor to those customer service satisfaction scores going up. Might not be the only thing that led to it happening, but certainly one of the things that led to it happening. So how do I decide what is useful and what is credible? I go back a step and think, what am I evaluating for? Why am I evaluating a training program? Is it to improve the program, which is the effective training, which is where I'll focus a lot on the level 1 and level 2? Or is it to maximize organizational results, which is where I'll focus a lot on level 4 because I'm showing business matrices? Actually, organizations spend a lot of time on either of these, but what they don't spend a lot of time on is it to improve on job performance. How do I evaluate whether the performance on this job is changing or not? Most often, the graph looks like this. There is a need for a training program. A training program is designed, either contextualized or non or whatever. There is a training program. The training program is run. Maybe it is online, maybe it is e-learning, maybe it's gamification, maybe it's a face-to-face, whatever type of training program. There is some training intervention, and pretty much that's it. And then there is an expectation 6 months later that there will be result. Doesn't work like that because I didn't do anything to help participants improve on-job performance. So if my reason for evaluating is improving on-job performance, I am focusing on that, and hence I'm building the required infrastructure, required support mechanisms in order to help participants. And then, of course, the relative contribution of each success factor can be that training intervention allowed these things to happen. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is look for data that is useful and credible and evaluate that in order to see how your organization is seeing results. So if in the chat window you would quickly type out, what kind of data are you collecting? Are you collecting useful data? Are you gathering credible data? And if you're doing both effectively, then you can give a D. And if you are doing parts of it, a little bit of credibility, then C, a little bit of usefulness, B. If neither, then A. Let's give it a moment to see what participants are saying. Looks like we haven't got any responses yet. So I think we'll continue, Alvin. What do you say?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So anything else that you had to add, Alvin, on this part, the sequentially and the looking at the levels separately? Anything else that you wanted to say here?
I think Preeti, you've covered it. I think the focus that you built on level 3 and level 4 was great. I just give some more examples how that can be done. So if you're doing technical programs, before even designing the program, you would ask questions on what is the level of performance. What are the measurable indicators of the performance? Would it be the time taken to resolve trouble tickets, the time taken to resolve complex product trouble tickets? If it's a behavioral program, you may agree on certain parameters like what's the amount of time taken to speak to the customers, what's the number of repeat complaints, what are the perceptible indicators of the practice of the skill, and those can be used in the coaching conversations that the managers have with the employees. And in sales, I have seen examples where managers a partner along with the sales colleague, and post the sales interaction with the prospect or the customer, they sit down and they give inputs based on those perceptible indicators of better performance, of higher performance.
Yeah.
These are some inputs I would like to place.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think these will be helpful to the audience that we have in terms of practical examples of what it could look like. Great. So the second error that we wanted to talk about, and this is something in my experience over the last 6 years with Kirkpatrick, seeing a little less of today, but I'm still seeing it far too often for it to be a comfortable place for that we are in, which is waiting after the training has until after the training has been delivered to consider evaluation. During our introduction, you heard from Drishti that C2COD also does a lot of training programs apart from the Kirkpatrick work itself. And in our work in organizational development space, because we are Kirkpatrick, we go to our clients and tell them that, right at the beginning, when we're designing a training program, we tell them that we can help you with evaluation, but we need to think about it right now. And many of the organizations will tell us, no, no, it's okay. You just do the training program, forget about evaluation, which is what we do. And then 6 months later, these very organizations will come back to us and say, hey, you know what, 6 months ago, you did that training program. You talked about evaluation then. Let's do it now. Forget about we didn't do it then. Let's do it now. And that's a very unnatural place to start thinking about evaluation, in my opinion, simply because, I didn't even design the training program based on a specific result in mind, and now I'm going to start thinking about how to evaluate it. So pretty much, that is something that I have seen a lot of organizations struggle with. Alvin, if you were to think about your experiences, I'm sure you used to do that at one point in time, and how has that journey changed for you from the time you used to think about it after the program to the time now when you're thinking about it before the program? What has shifted for you?
Okay, thanks, Preeti. I think one major change that happened is, I think when I went through understanding the Kirkpatrick model better, I understood that everything that's measured is not worth measuring, and everything that cannot be measured should not be. I think I realized that you don't need to apply Kirkpatrick to everything you do. That's the first thing, right? Auditors across the world, when they come and meet HR professionals, their favorite question, which is going to come, is, okay, oh, you did so much of training. Wow, so many hours and hours and lovely, so many big vendors, amazing. So tell me, what's the effectiveness of this? How many future leaders did you create? What's the impact on attrition? Were you able to create a career progression roadmap through the skill building that you do? Were you able to really build skills in such a way that you had to build skills and you didn't have to buy new skills from the market? And that's when, over a period of years, all of us L&D professionals, our eyes have opened that, what is it that we are trying to measure? My learning and how I've applied it is that, I realize we need to first understand where we need to apply what. Okay, there are some critical programs in the company where there is CEO involvement, where there's the board involvement, the large leaders are involved in it. It's part of probably the organization strategy. Those initiatives definitely need to be measured at level 4, and you need to start by defining what is measured for. I mean, and you're lucky, because the CEO would have already defined the results. The next set of things to do probably is gather those leading indicators, gather those perceptible behaviors, those actions. How do we know that it's happening? And then go back and design a program. I think that's the biggest learning. That's something as a big learning for me. I realized that instead of trying to apply Kirkpatrick where it can easily be applied, rather than, it's so easy sometimes, there are programs where you can have a test and you can say you did level 2. Immediately after that, probably that's an audited process, so you say you got level 3, and the business results have come through, so you want to stake claim, and business doesn't give you that claim, right?
So
uh,
true.
and I'm sure there are many on the call who would have experienced that, where the business said, yeah, you did a good job, but that's not the reason why our results improved, by the way. Okay, I as a leader put in many hours doing blah 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 blah, and then you realize, oh my god, I'm trying to buy my space of credit. And hence that's the catch. So now, when you begin from level 4, and you do this right, you involve the leader. So when you involve the leader, you let the leader know what's in it for them. That's the first part. So it's the leader should be driving the initiative, not the learning and development team, not the HR. That's the first important learning. The second is, what's in it for me for the leader is just half the battle won. What's in it for me for the employees who are going to do it? Simply adding it in their KRA and asking them, if you don't do it, you're going to lose your this year's appraisal, or telling them that this is mandatory, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. My biggest learning with this is when we connected a technical learning initiative to a career progression roadmap, and people start saying, okay, if we do these technical trainings, can we really grow? And when we start showing examples that for the internal job postings, if you have these technical training certifications, you are preferred. People start believing, oh, now this is what's in it for me. You don't need to follow up with me, L&D, I'll do it because I need to grow, right?
Yeah.
So the moment you give them the what's in it for me, you identify and do the level 4, level 3, level 2, and level 1 for the right program, so you don't burn out yourself as an L&D function. We don't have army of 200 resources, right, to do this.
No,
So
never.
these 2 3 big learnings for me which I've applied, and I think if we do this right, and we have the business representing us rather than us representing business, we are in good place.
Okay, fabulous. And I think you bring so many important points out, Alvin, where you're talking about, how is it that L&D stakes claim to certain credit? Because you're so right. Organizations don't want to give you credit. And unless I have started from level 4 and started by having that discussion with my stakeholder as to what does success look like to you? How will you know that this learning intervention is actually leading to something? What is your expectation from the program? And I think this might be something that a lot of participants on the call may or may not have come across, where ROI with regard to learning is return on investment. But Kirkpatrick doesn't believe in ROI. Kirkpatrick believes in something called return on expectation, which is something so much more uh, easy to do, but also is so much more relevant to the stakeholders. Because with ROI, what are we trying to say? That we, as L&D, we contributed this much percentage to the growth of the organization, which again is going to be a little bit of a fight. But if we can show them that before the program, you expected that the participants will get on a call with their client 3 times a week, that the participants will follow XYZ process when they're on the call with with their stakeholders, and they will fill out this form as a result of this. If that's what they expected, this is happening. And you told me that if all this happens correctly, the customers' satisfaction scores will start to go up. There will be lesser customer complaints. There will be more customer referrals, and you're seeing all of that. There's your return on expectation. So it is about getting that balance right and saying, because you wanted this, we need these few things, and because these few things happened right, we are able to show that the changes have happened and the expectations have been met. So some of the consequences that I have come across of staying thinking about evaluation after the training program itself has happened is that there is a lack of clarity on the true purpose of the program, because we didn't really think about the true purpose of the program. We realized that there was a need for some negotiation skills to happen. And because the leader told us that it's negotiation skills, we did a negotiation skills program with the best vendor in the world. But actually, if I had done a detailed analysis, I would have realized it's probably not a negotiation issue at all. It's an issue of assertiveness. And hence, since I didn't have clarity, I didn't sometimes even frame to the right thing. So how can I show results now? It could also mean that there is not enough meaningful program results to share with the stakeholder, because what am I showing? What kind of metrics did I measure? What kind of behavior changes did I measure? If I didn't measure anything, I'm going to find it very difficult to go back into retrospective mode and try to do this at this point in time. And of course, we will not sometimes get to the powerful level 3 and level 4, which is definitely a big stumbling block, because when 6 months later they are asking about learning effectiveness, they are not asking about the reaction sheet score. They are asking about how did business change, but we haven't measured that. So how am I going to show it to you? So again, going back to that Burson study, they looked at how much of continuous data collection with regard to evaluation do organizations do. And they realized that organizations which are at maturity level 1, which is at a low maturity level, are doing continuous data collection only at about 10% of the times, level 2 at 14%, 22% at level 3. But organizations which are at a very high maturity stage 55% of the time are continuously collecting data right from the time the program was even conceived to the time the program was delivered, after the delivery of the program, 6 months after the delivery of the program, 1 month after the 1 year after the delivery of the program. Throughout, they are collecting data. And this data is not just random data, this is data which they felt with along with their stakeholders was useful and credible. So that's the kind of data that they are collecting. So it's good for you to think about how much data collection are you doing and how frequently are you doing it. So some steps in order to avoid this flaw could be to create an evaluation plan as or even before you design the program. So somebody comes to you with the need for a training program, you start creating your evaluation plan at that point in time. Why are we doing this program? What is the need for this program? How is this program going to be useful? What metrics will you see changing? Some of the examples that Alvin shared earlier all can be used to create your evaluation plan. And pretty much what we are saying is instead of this order, follow this order. Start right at level 4. Then think about, okay, if this is the result that you want to achieve, what kind of behavior change will you need to see in your participants in order for that result to occur? If that's the behavior change that needs to occur, what kind of training intervention should happen that will lead to the best possible way of that behavior changing? And then think about, okay, what kind of engagement methods can I build in? How can I ensure that the customers are satisfied? Because if they were very unhappy with the program to begin with, it's very likely that they're not going to apply some of the learning either. So it is important to also think about the reaction of the participants as well. Certain questions that you could ask your stakeholders at this point in time would be, what problem is this training supposed to solve? What outcome would mean success to you? What does level 4 look like to you? What should people do actually on the job after the training program? What performance problem are you going to solve? What are you trying to solve? Where is the pain point that you have? And what do people need to do in order to be successful? So these are all questions across level 3 and level 4, a little bit of level 2 as well, where you can ask. There are a whole bunch of other questions as well that you could ask in order to take a consultative approach with your stakeholders and allow them to say that, here's why I need this program. Very often, I have found that when I go to an organization and they tell me that they want a training program on assertiveness skills, and when I ask them why, they'll give me a few wishy-washy answers. No, people are not assertive enough. They don't push back when they need to, and stuff like that. Okay, so what kind of problems occur as a result of this? They will give me a few answers, but you have to really dig deep in order to get to the real crux of the problem. And sometimes you realize that it's not an assertiveness problem at all, it's a culture problem. Because with one organization, we did assertiveness programs 3 times with the same set of participants and nothing changed. And then we said, you really need to find out what's going on here because these people don't not know assertiveness. They know what it is, but they're just not applying it. And then they did a whole survey and they found out that the participants told them that our bosses tell us that you go be assertive with somebody else, but with me, you do what I tell you. So where's the scope for him to be assertive or her to be assertive? So it is about asking the right kind of questions so that you reach the crux of the problem very early on, rather than again and again and again doing training programs that are may or may not be useful at all. So it is about thinking of these questions before the start of the program and then going with them. So I think we are going to be only covering 2 flaws today. I know Drishti said 3, but we will run out of time then if we try to get into one more. But if I were to ask you, apart from the 2 flaws that we've discussed, what other evaluation related pitfalls have you come across? Could you share some examples with us in the chat window? We'll give you a minute to take a look at them. All right, I don't think anything else is coming up, but we have a few questions which have come in yet. And between Alvin and I, we will try to answer some of these. Alvin, have you had a chance to look at any of these questions yet? Is there something
Yeah,
that you want to answer? Go ahead.
sure. I begin with probably the last one. So there's a question which says, when we say business representing us, how should we convince the business to believe in the importance of the learning intervention? So I think it's very simple. Honestly, it's really simple. If you're trying to solve a business problem, you don't need to convince them. But if you're taking a new initiative and trying to sell it because it's the fashion in the industry, they will not represent you. Even if you're coming with a amazing fabulous business, a great initiative, you need to try and connect it to the business problem, the business challenges. Once that is done, when you're launching an initiative, it's best launched by the leader of the business actually talking about what we are trying to solve here and how is the intervention going to help. And if those answers are not coming through in the internal discussion, obviously the leader is not going to represent us. So that will let you go back and relook at your program, redesign it, and come back. And when the leader is convinced, the leader will represent us 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With you want to take the other question?
Yeah, sure. So let me take a look at this question, which says, when you say after learning session, whether employee is committed or confident or not, how do we measure that? In my experience, and it has worked very well for me in the past, is pretty much straight up asking the participants, do you feel committed to applying this? A lot of times I face a lot of skepticism from L&D folks saying that nobody is going to say no to this question, but that's not been my experience. I have seen that if people feel that this is not something that they are going to be applying, be able to apply, they will go ahead and tell you in a survey that there will be a lot of people who might give you a 2 or a 2.5 or a 3 out of a 5, and that's a cause for concern, saying out of 20 participants that I had, 6 or 7 participants are saying that they will be a 2.5 or a 3 committed to it. So where is this? So in fact, that assertiveness example that I just gave you did ask such a question eventually, saying, are you committed to be assertive on the floor? And we got very low scores on that. And then when we start, you go do little digging, finding out why is it, what is the problem, that's when you come up with answers. So it is about asking those questions. And also confidence is definitely something people will tell you. You can also see that in the role plays, in the way that participants are behaving in the classroom. If people are really struggling with any kind of situation that you give them, a little caselet that you've given them to solve, a little role play that you've allowed them to work on, and you see that they are really struggling, then obviously it's a confidence issue. So you could look at various options, but definitely survey can be one of those as well. I think, Alvin, you also mentioned that you changed some of your programs into certifications earlier. Do you want to talk
Yes,
about that again?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that the very fact that certification needs effort. It's not a one-time thing or a one-day thing. You need to prepare. You need to prepare test preparations for a certification, and eventually you'll get there. Certifications also create this thing about wanting to get it. Some of them have it. I don't have a certification, and levels of certification attract people across geographies and across areas of work. They love to get certified at a higher level
Yeah.
and get credited for it. So I think it always works.
Yeah.
I see another question which talks about usually evaluation is done immediately after the training, and those evaluations are based on some key metrics. Do you think there should be a follow-up evaluation after 3-6 months, and that follow-up evaluation be based on the same key metrics or different? I'll give you a simple example. Let's say to be very very simple, let's say somebody wanted to learn a level 4 objective was they wanted to be independent while traveling in the city, and that's why they wanted to learn driving a car. Okay. The behavior that they're going to exhibit is that they're going to drive the car every day. Okay. The level 2 was that they will pass the test of the driving test by the local authorities, and the level 1 was my driving teacher was amazing. Okay. Now level 2 just told you whether you passed the test in that particular test environment. How can we ask the same questions when it's raining in the city, there are potholes in the city, there's a possible reroute, and you got to drive through a
You
lot
need
of
to
complex
parallel
roads?
park.
Yeah, to a parallel park. And what about you need to park when your back sensors are not working? So so the point is, in level 3 your questions have to be different, and they have to be milestones, they have to be defined in the learning journey. So don't design a learning intervention, design a learning journey that has milestones, and at every level of the journey don't need to evaluate but need to come together and check with the people. Are they on the journey? Are they on that journey? Do they feel themselves? And with the managers, do you think your people are on the journey? Are they evolving? If yes, what are the attributes? If no, what are the attributes? You get your answers, right? So obviously at level 3 your questions change, your scope changes, and I'm sure you'll use this example when you need to explain Kirkpatrick next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to steal that too.
Um,
Okay.
Drishti, you were saying something?
yeah. So I was saying that the question that you had asked on the challenges, we have received some responses on that as well. So if you want
Okay.
to talk about those challenges,
Sure. Let's take a look at those. Yeah.
yeah,
All right. So we are seeing a few responses here. Let me scroll down.
yeah. So like Justin has said that unsafe results or ignore industry factors can overwhelm any linkage to training efforts and reduce effectiveness.
And Justin, you are absolutely right that suddenly the product itself changed, suddenly the market was bad, and suddenly something else was bad, and suddenly the training doesn't get credit. And which is exactly why, if you've had that discussion with your stakeholders before the training program, saying how will you know that the training program is a success? How will you know that training has contributed to the changes? That's how you can get go away from being overwhelmed, because your business agreed that participants need to do X, Y, and Z behaviors on the job. So they have to be able to drive on those pothole roads, they have to be able to parallel park when there is a need to do it, they have to be able to do X, Y, and Z things. And while the participant learned on a manual car and now they're driving an automatic car, it's okay. The economic environment changed in that sense, but still I am able to see success because the participant is able to do all these things. And that's why you need to have had that discussion right at the beginning, and not 6 months after the training program saying, oh, okay, there's a great improvement in customer satisfaction scores or whatever it is, because at that point they are not going to believe you.
That
Alvin, you're
response was
smiling. Did you
that
have
that
anything else?
response was awesome. You built on the example. I would say you ensured that if there is commitment and confidence, the macroeconomic factors will not take away the entire quality of work done. Irrespective of the factors, you will be able to show that there was at least the renewed effort to be on track was maintained because of the skill building. That
Yeah,
that definitely can be shown. But agreed, there are so many factors that happen. But let's always focus on the area of influence and not ourselves dwell on the areas of concern. Yeah.
absolutely. Ina says that follow up on the evaluation results are not done, and that's very, very true, because again, either the useful information was not useful or not credible, and that's why it's not done. So if we decide what is it that we want to evaluate and we know why we are evaluating it, uh, follow up automatically happens, and then you are able to show linkages all the way up to level 4, in my opinion. Um,
Absolutely. Another question is, what are the top three areas to assess post the leadership program is run for the first time? The question you need to ask yourself: what was the objective of the leadership program? Was it building strategy? If yes, then have you assigned a project post that, which is a 6 months project or a 90-day project where a strategy prototype had to be submitted? Was it about building collaboration amongst the leaders? And if that is the objective, then do you see there is more participation in group initiatives? Do you see that group projects are now progressing? And do you see that they are now participating and ensuring that there is a joint value being created? So it depends on the kind of objective of your leadership program. If your program was to build the next gen leaders, then just look back in the last 1 year. Every time you lost a leader, did you find a leader from within? And if yes, you've succeeded. So you need to define outcomes and success basis the objective of the initiative. Obviously, you design the program basis the business need coming from your CEO and from the leadership,
yeah.
right? Another very interesting one, I think we can jointly answer it, is today we see a highly evolved L&D landscape with diverse learning channels, online gamification. Each of these require different training evaluation approaches. Do you think traditional models like Kirkpatrick can effectively assess learning effectiveness? Okay, I would love to say something from the 7 habits of highly effective people, which says it's about ethics or it's about personality. So the Kirkpatrick model vests in ethics. It's in the way in which it's designed, irrespective of the kind of technology evolution or the modes in which you deliver. That's making learning interesting, making it fascinating. But you could apply the 4 levels of learning effectiveness in any shape or form. I attended a wonderful program of BTS on which was around finance and business, and they built a beautiful learning simulation on running a company. They give you the entire money and they say run this company, and I could see how they're beautifully applied Kirkpatrick, all the four levels. And at the end of the game, you come to know whether the company ran up in profits or was it in losses. And you could actually see, I mean, if you'd have given the kind of money to that person and he was a leader, something like this could have been achieved. So you can apply Kirkpatrick irrespective of the kind of model, learning model that you use. Yeah.
And
Maybe you can build on that, Preeti.
absolutely. And the idea is that Kirkpatrick, if you think of it as a level one reaction sheet, then yeah, today it's not applicable. But I think of Kirkpatrick more of a philosophy than anything else, because if my philosophy is to again go back to Seven Habits to begin with the end in mind, which is a core principle of Kirkpatrick, then it is about saying, am I beginning with an end in mind, which I can do for anything, even if I have to design a game or a e-learning program or whatever it is that I'm designing? Am I beginning with that end in mind? Do I have my goal and objective very clear? And if I have that goal and objective clear, what all do I need to do in order to get to that goal and objective? So I have seen it applied across organizations. There is something else that we are using as a training design methodology, which is called high performance learning journeys, which again banks on the Kirkpatrick model as its basis to say, I'm not, and Alvin mentioned this as well, don't design a learning intervention, design a learning journey. And that learning journey might have elements of gamification, of face to face intervention, of mobile learning, of micro learning, whatever it is, but it is building on all that to reach that final goal, which is what the organization designed, desired. So I think that kind of answers your question.
I have one last question there which says, please state a few evaluation pitfalls apart from those which have been already discussed on the call. Yeah, sorry, Drishti, go
Uh,
ahead.
yeah, I'm just saying that we have only 5 minutes. So if in 2 minutes you can just answer this question and then
Sure.
we'll have the
Yeah.
question.
Sure. I can state one which you should never do. It's a mortal sin in evaluation. Is when you feel you have data or you are convinced with some information that yes, evaluation is showing that there is impact. Don't go and try and sell it that it is your outcome, your product. Do not sell that email out. I'd like to highlight that there's a big difference. That is going to only get a reaction from the business saying, hello, you know what,
My
excuse
credit.
me, that's mine, right? It's because of me, and because it's an initiative that I believed in, and I drove the right behaviors in the business, because of which the learning design succeeded. So that is one you should always go and talk to the leader. Tell the leader, I think this is what I see. What do you see? Ask their opinion. When they are convinced, they will tell you. If they are not, they'll ask you for more. And when they are convinced, they will themselves publish it, and they will also give you your seat at the table and the credit that you deserve. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's one big learning of mine.
And one last one from me, if Drishti allows, is not paying attention to or not keeping your ear on the ground. Once a training program has happened, not really thinking about what are the participants saying? What are their supervisors saying? What kind of information am I hearing? Because that can be evaluation data doesn't have to be numbers alone. It can very well be references. It can be very well feedback or validation letters, anything at all. So keeping your ear on the ground and listening to the things is another huge evaluation mistake, in my opinion. And now over to you, Drishti.
Yeah. So thank you, Alvin and Preeti, for great insights and sharing your knowledge and experience with the audience. I think it would really help if it would have been really helpful to them because all these questions and you've taken most of the questions, so kudos to that. But I think there are some questions that we've missed, and I would request you to take them offline maybe.
Sure.
We'll help you with that. And meanwhile, the audience can provide their feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section because your input matters. And once again, we would like to thank today's webcast partner, T2C OD, and our speakers for this webcast and the knowledge that they have shared with us today. That concludes today's webcast. Stay tuned for many more such exciting sessions. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Drishti.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.